What's up, everybody? It's Jordan, and welcome to the Sports Dude Hines Show. Today is April 7th, 2022, and on today's episode, I'm joined by Kenny, also known as Kenny the Sports Guy. How you doing today, Kenny?
I'm doing okay, man. How you doing?
Doing really, really good. And, this past week, we have a lot to talk about. This past week, there was so much wrestling, whether it was WrestleMania, New Japan events, Control Your Narrative. There were just so many things. There was WrestleCon as well. And today is Thursday. WrestleMania was Saturday and Sunday. And you actually had an actual chance to go to WrestleMania, New Japan, and Control Your Narrative events. And you also got to meet some wrestlers like Thunder Rosa, Adam Cole as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of starting off, what was that like bucket list experience like? What was that whole weekend like in Dallas?
Oh man, where did you start? It was actually a dream because although I actually been to WrestleMania twice before in New York City because I live in New York City, going out outside of New York City is actually fantastic because you get to explore the city, you get to meet all these nice people, cool people. Uh, as far as meeting the wrestlers, I met Braun Strowman with Crow Gonzalez and EC3 at a Control Your Narrative event in Dallas, Texas, at a random bar in Gillies. That's what it's called, Gillies. So after the event, they had like an after party and they started mingling with fans. And I just came up to them and just say, "Hey, you would like to take a photo?" And but Crow Gonzalez is like she's like the sweetest woman on earth, and she was with her family there, so I didn't want to, be that wrestling fan where I could just, stalk her from behind. I'm like, nah. So I just asked her when she was away for her family and say, hey, can I get a photo? And she was like, yeah, sure. And I got the photo for that. Same thing with Braun, even though Braun was surrounded by a whole sea of people wanting to get a photo. So he seemed like a little bit upset because many people out there were trying to, push him for the photo. Like there were kids being pushed there as well. But yeah, it was such a great event. I covered the Control Your Narrative event. I'm actually doing an episode on it pretty soon. It should be available out next week. Yeah, that was my experience at WrestleMania weekend. I mean, WrestleCon was amazing. I met Thunder Rosa, sweetest woman on earth. I met Adam Cole actually. We had a 5-minute conversation with Adam Cole about Elden Ring, like a video game that he plays during his YouTube channel. And yeah, I mean, it was actually a very, very fantastic event.
That is amazing. It's like a once in a lifetime opportunity. So you also went to a New Japan event, is that right?
Yes, I went to New Japan also. That was actually on Friday, April 1st, I believe. Yeah, April 1st. So it was at the Fairmount in Dallas, which wasn't really a far walk from my hotel. So from there, I saw Killer Cross actually facing Minoru Suzuki, and that match was absolutely fantastic. Like that was my match of WrestleMania week because those two put on a show. It was just an amazing match. I saw White wrestle as well. Jay White is actually a fantastic performer. Let's see who else. John Moxley was actually in New Japan. He actually made like a surprise appearance, and he wanted Will Ospreay for the championship. And yeah, I mean, it was just a fantastic event.
That's super, super cool. I know you're a big fan of, I don't know if it's Killer Cross. I know you tweet about him a ton on Twitter. I know you like him a lot, but
Yeah.
I don't really follow New Japan much. I know a couple wrestlers. Was Ospreay able to have a match there?
He's having a match actually April 16th in Chicago against John Moxley. I think for the title though.
That should be really, really good. That is so freaking awesome. Not just WrestleMania, but you got to see those other events as well. And then when you already talk about those events, but then you have WrestleMania, and when you go there, you kind of have a general idea of what's going to happen. But what happens, you're very, very likely you were able to see Vince McMahon's last match, even though it made no sense at all, and Steve
Mm-hmm.
Austin's last match.
I have a lot to say about that.
So
I actually did an episode. It was released an hour ago, actually. My review of WrestleMania. It's on CandiceSportsGuy.com, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. So I go more in depth about all the matches that I saw, and I give my review on it. But I could talk about them here.
When you kind of talking about the Vince McMahon and Steve Austin matches first, it really made no sense to me. And it's one of those deals. I feel like we've said this multiple times when you've been on my show. WWE had a chance to create new stars, but once again, they relied on old timers and nostalgia just to get people into it. Somebody who hasn't watched wrestling in 10 years, they go on Twitter, holy crap, Vince McMahon just had his first match in however long. They see there on Twitter, Steve Austin just had his first match in 19 years. And it's one of those things, they have the opportunity to make huge new stars. For example, look at Austin Theory. To me, McAfee, I don't get WWE's obsession with him. I like him a little bit, but I think
I don't get the fans' obsession with him. I think he's a horrible announcer.
I do too. And you even tweeted Jericho is better, and Jericho reshared it or something. That was super, super cool. But
yeah, that actually blew up, believe it or not. A lot of people are arguing with me because they say, "Oh, McAfee's a better announcer," but I think he's a horrible announcer. It just seems like every time there's an exciting moment, he gets some sort of heart attack or a stroke.
And if there's an amazing moment, he has to try to ruin it and try to be funny when it's just annoying, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
And okay, for example, look at Austin Theory and McAfee. Obviously, tons of eyes are going to be a McAfee. People who don't really know much about wrestling. You had a prime opportunity to put Austin Theory over and beat McAfee. I have no idea why I did not do that. That makes zero sense to me, especially a guy who clearly Vince McMahon thinks very highly of Austin Theory, the fact that he's going to pair him with him, but you still let him lose to a guy who has never really had a WWE match. He's had a NXT match against Adam Cole, but he's not really had an actual match in WWE. And to me, that really made no sense. Even when you go back and watch that McAfee, Austin Theory match, people are acting like McAfee did moves that's unheard of, which is it's kind of weird because you go back and watch that match against Adam Cole just a little bit over a year ago. Pretty much everything pretty much everything Pat McAfee did at WrestleMania, he did against that match against Adam Cole. But people didn't talk about it because it was NXT and obviously wasn't nearly as big as WrestleMania. But I just don't get why Theory didn't win that one. And then going back to Steve Austin and McMahon, I would say they dropped the ball on that. That makes no sense. I'm
sorry. I was so mad with that. People tend to forget that after the McAfee match, McMahon actually wrestled for a good 5 minutes. So in my mind, I'm like, what are you doing, WWE? Nobody wants to see a 77-year-old man wrestle anymore. I get it. It might be his last match because Vince is getting up there in age, but I just feel like that match was not needed. That was a time filler.
Exactly. And it's one of those things. You look at some of these guys who, Finn Balor, who's a champion. I don't believe he even had a match at WrestleMania.
No, he actually had a match the night before. The WrestleMania before SmackDown. And it was just the SmackDown before WrestleMania. So he was in the Battle Royal for some strange reason, along with Ricochet.
Yeah, I just don't get that. And, Vince McMahon makes no sense. Steve Austin, they've been teasing it for months, with Kevin Owens trash talking, Texas and everything like that. What are your kind of thoughts, on the Steve Austin match?
I thought it was sad. Honestly, look, I get the nostalgia. I get people paid to come to WrestleMania for all the nostalgic pop and the young up-and-coming stars. But to be honest, I did not want to see a 57-year-old man wrestle for 15 minutes. I know Kevin Owens carried the match. Majority of the match because he's much younger and much more athletic than Austin now. But in all honesty, that match should never happen. I think when Stone Cold retired 19 years ago in this last match against The Rock, that was the perfect ending, the perfect sunset. But I just don't see, this, I hated it. but I just don't see, how this would benefit his legacy. Like he faced Kevin Owens, yes, but it was just bad. It was just bad and unnecessary.
And when you look at WWE, you look at Steve Austin, you look at Vince McMahon, you look at even Shawn Michaels a couple of years ago, you look at Lita not too long ago, you look at Edge. Edge, I can kind of get out of any of those. It makes the most sense returning. But, he didn't really want to retire because of injuries. But when you look at those other guys, they just rely on them for just no reason. When you have these guys who, Samoa Joe, he signed with AEW, kind of talk about that in a little bit here. But Samoa Joe, to me, had a ton of potential. And several years ago, when he was in the Brock Lesnar feud, I thought that would have been the perfect opportunity to put that world title on Samoa Joe. It made a ton of sense. He was over with the fans. He's a very, very underrated wrestler, and he's a really great wrestler when you look at his size as well. He's great at promos, but he's not really young. But he was a star who could have been big for a couple of years, but instead you have a part-time guy, Lesnar, who wins over Samoa Joe. Because so many instances as well, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, I feel like we say this every couple of months, but until WWE proves otherwise, people are just going to keep on saying it. They rely on the part-timers, and it's really going to catch up to him in a couple of years.
Agreed. I mean, you obviously know that Cody Rhodes came into the WWE, and honestly, I just don't think it's a big of a deal. I mean, look, before AEW, he actually established the name The American Nightmare in the indie circuit and all that stuff. So when he came to AEW, he actually made a name for himself there, but he didn't win the AEW championship. Yes, he won the TNT championship, yeah, but his superstar status didn't elevate there. So it elevated a little bit, but now when he came to WWE, all of a sudden everybody loves him. And before that, everyone kept bashing him at AEW because of his matches, of his feud. They're saying that his promos are actually very cheesy. Like, I actually agree with that part because last Monday night when he gave his promo to the crowd, he gave the exact same promo he did at AEW when he first started out. Talk about his father. There's nothing wrong with that. His father was a legend. He talked about winning the championship, but it just feels like it was a rehash for like what he did at AEW.
I really agree with what you said there. Like, it's one of those with those promos. You're expecting, a great promo from Cody Rhodes the night after WrestleMania. And those Raws after WrestleMania, those are like the biggest Raws of the year. And that Raw was definitely a huge letdown, in my opinion. And, he basically says the same promo. And it seems when you look at it, he didn't just say that once in AEW. It seems like he said that same thing kind of several times throughout his time with AEW. He has a heartfelt promo. And I don't know. To me, it just did not really. I just kind of felt really repetitive because we've heard that so many times in AEW. It's kind of crazy because several months ago, I think it was the week after the talks of Cody Rhodes might not re-sign with AEW. We were talking like there's no way he goes to WWE. It's part of a work. It's a storyline. It would have made so much sense if it was a storyline. And now we're sitting here, Cody Rhodes is with WWE, and it's just kind of crazy to say, especially because when you look at, this is really the first big-time guy who was at AEW to jump to WWE. We've seen people from WWE jump to AEW, like Moxley, Daniel Bryan, Jericho, so many different people. Honestly, in my opinion, when you look at the people who was going to jump to from AEW to WWE, I thought Jericho for sure would have been the first person, in my opinion. I would not have expected somebody to be who was executive vice president and have his own show, reality show. It's just kind of crazy to me. I'm still kind of in disbelief. It's one of those things, like you hear it and you see the rumors that he's supposed to be signed for WWE. But it's one of those things to me, it's like, you're not really going to believe it until you actually see it. And then when you see it, it's just like, holy crap. Like, you would never expect him to go back. And then he talks about, like, even the post-match short interview he had with somebody after his match with Seth Rollins, and he was getting like all emotional talking about Triple H. Like, it just did not make any sense. You could just tell.
It was actually kind of hypocritical, actually.
Yeah, and you could just tell, like, I don't know how to describe it. You could tell there was a significant difference in the being more scripted than WWE and AEW. Because AEW, I mean, he could say whatever he want basically, and not really get in trouble because, I mean, he's an executive vice president. WWE, I mean, we all know they have scripts like word for word, everything like that. And you could just tell in his interviews and even on Raw, there was just a little bit of a change there. But, with WrestleMania, with Cody Rhodes, what was that kind of like pop like? How loud was that arena when Cody Rhodes debuted against Seth Rollins?
Wow. That was actually the biggest pop I've ever heard in the last 10 years. I think it was a couple years ago where Roman Reigns, he actually gave a promo, I think the day after he won the Royal Rumble, I think, or he defeated The Undertaker. I think that was 5 years ago. So that Raw after Mania, they booed the living hell out of him. And here with Cody Rhodes, it was just deafening. Like, it was just actually, I was actually surprised to see that he got a reception like that. But I just feel like, with me, like, the entrance to the entrance was actually fantastic, but the entrance actually overshadowed the match. The match was pretty decent at best.
And when you look at Cody Rhodes, it's still kind of wild that he's with the WWE. And you mentioned Reigns with the Undertaker. I remember that like it was yesterday. And not he beat the Undertaker, and at that point everybody thought the Undertaker was retired. Mm-hmm. But going back to what we already talked about, WWE continues to get the nostalgia in those old guys as many matches as they can. And I mean, that crowd was insane when he beat the Undertaker there. But I think it actually was Orlando. I might be wrong. But I think
it was Orlando.
And it was just kind of, crazy with that. And it's just like Cody Rhodes with WrestleMania, he defeats Seth Rollins. And it's one of those things, it's like, I'm intrigued by it. I'm not going to lie. This was the first Raw I was intrigued to watch in several years. It's just WWE has not really been entertaining these past couple years. To me, and then it was just horrible. I feel like, in my opinion, it's probably one of the worst Raws after WrestleMania in a very long time.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
When you look at WrestleMania, nights 1 and 2, I would say more so night 1, it wasn't bad. I wasn't really having any expectations, but I thought it was a little bit better. The people gave him credit for, with WrestleMania. So, talking about Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania, what were kind of some of your maybe other matches? And there was also the Johnny Knoxville match. It was horrible.
Oh my God.
Zayn. And there was the Logan Paul match. So what are your kind of thoughts on some of those other matches?
So I'm going to start with the Johnny Knoxville match. I thought it was the stupidest thing I've ever seen, but it was just fantastic, though. So basically the whole match was like a Jackass episode. I mean, have you seen Jackass?
I've seen bits and pieces of it.
Yeah, so basically if you see a Jackass episode, I don't know, on Netflix or Amazon Prime, you would see the exact same match. You would see the exact same thing happen at WrestleMania. My only complaint, I don't know why Knoxville won that match. I thought Zayn should have won that match. I don't know how much they paid Zayn to take the pin. They must have paid him a substantial amount of money for it. But it was a stupid match, but it was fun to watch. So the Logan Paul match, it was okay. I mean, Logan Paul was pretty decent in the ring. He didn't do anything spectacular other than doing the Three Amigos and the Frog Splash honoring Eddie Guerrero. So the Miz actually carried that match, the walk to that match, and the Mysterios as well. Let's see what else. My best match of WrestleMania will have to be the Bianca Belair versus Becky Lynch fight. That fight was fantastic. Those women killed it.
And when you talk about the Miz and Logan Paul, that to me doesn't make any sense. And you would kind of think the Mysterios would win that match, and then maybe they would kind of continue the feud between the Miz and maybe Dominique or Rey Mysterio. But for whatever reason, they have the Miz and Logan Paul win, and then the Miz turns on Logan Paul, and you start thinking like, well, maybe this is going to be like another match we see at WrestleMania between the Miz and Logan Paul. Like, you don't want to, but I think it possibly could be entertaining. But I just don't like the idea if we would see this again, that Logan Paul will be formed like by himself. I feel like some of these celebrity guys kind of need somebody else with them.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at The Miz, I feel like when you look at the WWE, I feel like when you look at the past, like these underrated wrestlers who've been in WWE for quite some time, The Miz, Dolph Ziggler, some of those guys come to mind. And WWE has so much trust in The Miz. When you look back several years ago, it was Alonzo Ball's first appearance in the Staples Center. And, they had LeVar
Oh
Ball
God,
there.
that was
And
bad.
it was bad, but it's like WWE had so much trust in The Miz to make that work. And I feel like The Miz did the best he could, to get out of that. We've seen him with other celebrities as well, and now with Logan Paul. So I feel like that has a chance to be possibly intriguing, but I just don't get that because now when you have The Miz turn on Logan Paul kind of seems like the face in that feud, which I don't really get that. I feel like I think he would be better off as a heel. But then, looking, some of those other matches, I did really like, I thought Paul was pretty good. I thought he was better than I thought he was going to be. But, some of those other matches, like you said, Belair and Lynch, that was really good. And, when you talk about, post WrestleMania, Raw, we already kind of talked about it a tad bit with the Cody Rhodes promo, but, Veer debuted and, he did a move after the Miz and Dominique match on Dominique. And, that was just kind of very anticlimactic in my opinion. You kind of would have thought he wouldn't have been in the match. And those moves that's, in my opinion, weren't that good. I kind of would have expected more from him. And I don't know. It might just be me, but you could already kind of tell. I think within a year, Veer will be like released because it's one of those deals like people in WWE, they hype up and they hype up and they hype up. And then a month, oh, he's not over. So let's release him. Like we saw that with Emelina. They had the video packages with her for like 6 months. And holy crap, that was horrible. And she was released shortly after. We kind of saw the same thing with Mustafa Ali and his kind of group a couple years ago, and that was horrible. Mustafa Ali is still with WWE. He's asked for his release when he hasn't got it. But when you look at some of these other guys, like I think Veer wouldn't be shocked if he was released in a year or so. It would not surprise me one bit.
So let's go back to the Logan Paul sec. So he was actually booed out of the building at WrestleMania. Okay, a lot of people did not like him. He had a lot of heat there. Like people were booing him, people were actually cursing at him. So he did his job as a heel. And as for Veer, my God. So it took him literally 6 months to come to Raw. So they kept on playing these video packages every week, saying that he's coming. I think since October, I believe. So when he came back this past Monday, I just feel that it was like I agree. I feel like it was very anticlimactic. I think he's gonna be another generic big man where he just plays the heels, beat up a lot of bad guys, beat up a lot of good guys, just maintain like being strong. And honestly, I don't see any, interest in him.
Yeah, I completely agree that they just dropped the ball on him, and you had 6 months to prepare for this, and this is the best you can do. Like WWE fans were so hopeful, like maybe this could be intriguing, and then you could just tell from the get-go it's probably not going to work out for him. And something else on the first Raw after WrestleMania. Holy crap! Like this is the like I don't keep up with WWE much. I kind of know what's going on a little bit, but I don't really watch it. Watching it. Kevin Owens is giving a promo, just getting booed out of the building, talking bad about Texas and Steve Austin. And then there's this guy with a shaved beard coming down. His name is Ezekiel. Well, after about a couple seconds, holy crap, that's Elias. And, it's not Elias.
No, that's
It's
Ezekiel.
his brother. It's his brother.
That's his twin brother now. His name is Ezekiel. We meet Ezekiel.
That's so stupid. Like, when I was like 7 or 8, when my sister was like 2 or 3, okay, so I would have like this random twin that would show up named Gordon, and I would scare the crap out of her. I'd be like, "You better stop before Gordon's coming," and I just randomly scare. That's basically the same thing that WWE has with Elias, but his twin brother. Like this makes 0 sense. Like as Elias to me was one of the very few WWE wrestlers I actually liked quite a bit. I thought he was very entertaining. Then as it they had he was longer with WWE. It was slowly getting worse and worse and worse. And then they had these video packages around August that Elias was dead. No, there was talks about, he might have been released before he came back. They had no plans for him. And then, like that is horrendous. Like that is so stupid. With the very few people I like in WWE, you have to. He goes away and his twin brother shows up. Ridiculous.
I really have nothing to say about that other than I expect Elias to be released within the next 6 months. Clearly, that's Elias. We all know that. But when I thought about it, I started screaming in my hotel rooms, like saying, "What have they done to you, Elias? Like, why? Why have you shaved? Like, what is all this? Why do you look like Macho Man Randy Savage?" So I started screaming that, and then I remember tweeting out the same thing. And I have no idea what WWE is gonna do with Elias. Kevin Owens looked like he was confused as well. He even said in the promo, "Where have you been, Elias?" I mean, it was just bad. It was just terrible. So even the crowd was like, "Who the hell is this guy?" And he had little to no reception on that. So I expect Elias to be released. Well, Elias or Ezekiel or whatever you want to call him. I think he's gonna get released around October and November. I literally had no more words on the matter because it was terrible. It was bad.
And it's crazy because, we're talking about the crowds, the first Raw after WrestleMania. Those are the craziest crowds at Raw every single year. I mean, the Cody Rhodes, pop on Monday was very big. We talked about that Roman Reigns, booing out of the building after he defeated The Undertaker at WrestleMania. And the fact that he comes, obviously it's Ezekiel. He comes out. Obviously not Elias, and he comes out. There is not a single cheer or boo in the arena. That was probably, him changing is so stupid, but the fact that there was no sound at all after Raw to WrestleMania, to me, is absolutely crazy. Like, these are the loudest crowds you're going to hear all year, non-pay-per-view events. And you don't hear, you could hear a pin drop in that arena. Really, it's kind of surreal to me, and it's just kind of insane that they would get rid of Elias. And I don't know. He was one of those guys. I can kind of get maybe where people be like, "Oh, it's the same stuff, just plays his guitar." Okay, when you look at some other people who's the same stuff, look at Cody Rhodes. We already talked about his promos. Sometimes they're the same, but people are all of a sudden love him. Elias was, in my opinion, I thought he was very, very underrated. He was very entertaining. He was funny. He's been in, segments with Chris Jericho before, but even with Cena before. I might be wrong on that, but it's crazy because he's been with some of these top guys in WWE. He has so much potential. He just wasn't used, and then you just cut him off. Oh, he's gonna play a character as his brother, shave off his beard, and now he looks like one of the dads from the Rugrats show. Like, it is absolutely crazy.
Pickles.
I still cannot believe it. And when you look at Cody Rhodes, the debuting at WrestleMania with WWE, Ezekiel. He's a new debuter. I guess, if you want to be that way. But, AEW had a big, signing this past weekend at the, Ring of Honor, event this past weekend.
I regret not going to that. I was actually around the area. I didn't went. I regret it.
So that was in Dallas as well?
It was actually 30 minutes away from Dallas. Like a 25-minute drive. I regret not going. I should have went.
And you look at it, Samoa Joe debuts, FTR and the Briscoes had a really nice match. And, Samoa Joe, to me, I was talking to somebody maybe like 6 months ago, and I said there was 5 wrestlers from any promotions who could sign with AEW. Kevin Owens, Samoa Joe. I would like to see Rollins, Will Ospreay. I don't remember the 5th one. But, so they signed Samoa Joe, and I feel like this could be a very good signing. Like we kind of talked about earlier, Samoa Joe was not utilized properly in WWE. He had so much more potential than WWE, let him have. I wouldn't say he was buried, but he was not used properly at all. He should have won that championship against Lesnar several years ago. He really should have had more championship opportunities than what he did. And, he's had some great feuds in the WWE, like the, famous one with him and AJ Styles. He was really good in NXT, when he was there as well. Then you have a guy who is a really good wrestler, underrated, phenomenal promos. And, this was a terrific signing by AEW. And then his very first match, in an AEW ring, you have him against Max Caster, which I think was freaking brilliant by Tony Khan. Because you knew Max Caster was going to say something about either him being released or something about WWE or NXT to some extent. And I thought that rap or promo, whatever you want to call it, was really good against Samoa Joe. But I'm really, really excited for this. Some of these signings, this past 6 months or so, I would say Samoa Joe is probably towards the top of my list, the most excited about in AEW.
So Samoa Joe is home, basically. I was actually very excited when he showed up at ROH last Friday. He's home, and he's gonna murder every single person there. He's gonna be champion within maybe, I would have to say, at the end of the year. Obviously, there are going to be people before him, like new signings that came before him. They're going to wind up being champion. I could see Keith Lee being the champion. Adam Cole also. I think he's going to beat Hangman Page next week. Samoa Joe, man, I am so happy for him. He deserves to be AEW. Also, he has two options to win the championship. So he can win the AEW championship and he can win the ROH championship. People tend to forget that actually ROH falls under AEW now since Tony Khan bought it. So the sky's the limit for that man. I feel like WWE dropped the ball on him the same way they dropped the ball on FTR. Now FTR is over, it's over beyond the moon. And I'm just so happy for Joe, and he's gonna get all the opportunities he wants there.
It's interesting with Joe and AEW, and you look at it. There's so many different feuds we haven't seen Joe, but we could possibly see in AEW that has potential to be very good. Sky's the limit for him, and like you said, would not be shocked one bit if he's champion by the end of the year. And something else with AEW, and I would say that in my opinion, when you look at AEW right now, I would say this is probably one of the things I just don't like about it. When you look at, Dan Lambert, he's one of those guys these past 4 or 5 months. He's really, I would say, gotten better with his promos, obviously with him and Scorpio Sky and, Ethan Page and the Paige Van Zant. And it's kind of looking like we're going to be seeing Paige Van Zant and Scorpio Sky against Sammy Guevara and Ty Conti. And when you have Sammy Guevara and Ty Conti, obviously they're dating. In my opinion, I just do not like the idea of them feuding together, being, I don't know, I would say, I guess, open on TV. Because, obviously, the last time we saw Sammy Guevara in a relationship, he proposed to his girlfriend, and 2 months later, they broke up. Mm-hmm. And, when you look at Ty Conti and Guevara, I just don't like them pairing in AEW. I think it's kind of cheesy and corny. And ultimately, I think Guevara is much, much better as a heel than he is a face. I think they need to have him go back as a heel, just like they had Jericho go back as a heel, with the Jericho Appreciating Society. But to me, I really want to see Guevara and Ty Conti not be together on TV at the same time. Because, when you watch some of Guevara's vlogs and stuff, they are so freaking corny and cheesy. And we're slowly starting to see that, get into the AEW TV time, which, in my opinion, I do not really like at all.
So here's the thing with Guevara. Cody Rhodes left along with Brandy, so he basically replaced their character. Because Cody Rhodes and Brandy, they were very, very cringeworthy, whenever they do promos, especially Brandy. So the last promo Brandy did before she left AEW was with Dan Lambert, and it seems like she wanted to fight him. So that promo came out to be very cringeworthy. I think the AEW saw when Cody left, they needed another hated figure in their roster. So they just probably look at Ty Conti and Sammy and say, "Hey, you guys are gonna replace Cody Rhodes as the most hated character in AEW." To me, I know it's cringeworthy, but I think it's actually a stroke of genius because now Sammy Guevara is turning into a heel character with Ty Conti. I really don't like Sammy Guevara. I think he can wrestle. I think he's one of the best talents AEW has. But I think it was a bad move in not necessarily a bad move in teaming up with Ty Conti as they're like a real life couple, but I just I think it's a stroke of genius that Tony Khan did that because now signing Guevara, he's gonna be like a most hated villain now.
And when you look at it, I think it's different. Like when you have people who've been together for quite some time, even married. When you look at like Nikki Bella and Cena, I know they broke up, but they were together for a long time. Brie Bella, Daniel Bryan, even Britt Baker, and Adam Cole. But to me, I just feel like with not being with somebody for a very long time, and they have that, I don't know. It should be interesting, and I don't know. Interested to see where that goes. And something else you mentioned, Ty Conti. She's I would say one of the better women's wrestlers, and I would say has potential to maybe win some type of title within the next year or so. Obviously, when you look at the women's division right now, it's pretty much led by Thunder Rosa, Britt Baker, and Jade Cargill.
Mm-hmm.
Jade Cargill, she's currently the TBS champion. She has a very, very impressive streak. She is currently 29-0. And I know this is going to sound crazy, but when you look at it, I honestly think there's a chance Jade Cargill could be the next Goldberg. Goldberg was 173-0 before he had his first loss. Like I said, Jade Cargill is 29-0. And several years ago, when AEW first started, Tony Khan, I believe there was some rumors, and he was talked about, maybe looking to see how much it would be to sign Goldberg to AEW. And he talked about, there was rumors about if it did happen, he would have a similar Goldberg win streak like he did, years and years ago when he won 173 straight. I think, since obviously they did not sign Goldberg, Jade Cargill can kind of make up for it and maybe go to that streak and maybe possibly surpass it because they have a couple people like I mentioned, but if you have Jade Cargill, if she has 173 wins in a row, she's going to be clearly the top women's wrestler, maybe not just the top women's wrestler, maybe the top, wrestler on AEW's roster at that point if she has that many wins in a row. And I don't think there's anybody right now who could even come close to beating her. And I know it sounds crazy, and she would have to win over like 140 more, but I know it's risky, but honestly, I kind of like the idea of it. We've kind of seen, they're talking about the streak quite a bit already. And, they're talking about it, she's having matches and she's having, beating these people in 4 or 5 minutes. I kind of like the idea of having Jade Cargill beat Goldberg's streak. That should be very interesting. And I honestly do not think it's as crazy as people would make it to be.
Well, first of all, let's just hope and pray that Goldberg doesn't sign with AEW. I think he's done. I think he should just enjoy retirement. Go out, make movies, go out, build cars. Just stay away from AEW by any cost. Like, I don't want him wrestling there no more. So as far for Jade Cargill, I think she has gotten a lot better like a year ago because she was bad on the mic. But yesterday she just delivered like a great promo. It was just, I'm just happy to see her, excel, like level up from last year to this year. And I wouldn't say that she's gonna be like the next Goldberg. I think she's gonna win maybe at least 10 more matches before somebody big for AEW is gonna win it. I personally think he's gonna either be Rudy Soho or Tony Storm winning the TBS championship, and I can see that happening.
So it'd be very interesting with Cargill, and she's obviously like when you look at 1 year ago in AEW, she was kind of not really talked about at all. She had that match with Shaq that really, really elevated her a lot. Since then, she hasn't lost, and it's crazy because when you look at wrestling 1 year ago, 1 year ago was WrestleMania. Look at everything that's changed. Daniel Bryan was in the main event at WrestleMania, and now he's with AEW. CM Punk is with AEW. Cody Rhodes, a year ago, was one of the top stars in AEW, and now he has a shocking debut at WrestleMania. There's so many of these other signings as well. Both of the Hardy Boys are in AEW. Samoa Joe's with AEW. And it's crazy because 1 year ago we said, wow, wrestling is like so crazy right now. It's very interesting these next several years. 1 year ago to the date, holy crap. Like, I don't think anybody really could have possibly imagined all this stuff was going to happen. This has been the craziest, I would say, wrestling this past calendar year that we've seen in a very long time with all these signings, all these matches, and everything else. And I feel like wrestling as a whole just has so much, opportunity potential in the next couple of years, because it could be very, very good with even more of these signings and matches as we see maybe in the next year or so.
Well, it's like what John Cena said. Like the wrestling economy is booming right now because you got a lot of wrestlers going elsewhere. You got WWE wrestlers going to AEW. You got AEW wrestlers going to WWE. The indies, like New Japan Pro Wrestling, Control Your Narrative, Ring of Honor, and Impact are all being elevated right now because a lot of people they want more and more wrestling, but they don't want to watch WWE. So when AEW came on the scene, it was like the first time in like 20 years that us wrestling fans have an option where we could watch something else. We could complain about it, we could love it, but I just feel like this is a great thing for wrestling right now. It's a great time to be a wrestling fan, casual or hardcore, and I would love to see more of this in the future. I would love to see more New Japan Pro Wrestling events happening in America, more Impact events happening in New York City, in America, and like around the country. I mean, it's just an awesome time to be a wrestling fan right now.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and these next few years should be very interesting as well, because I mean, this past kind of year starts everything. Like pretty much anything could happen in wrestling. And talking about Jade Cargill, something interesting about her. She's actually married to former Cincinnati Red Brandon Phillips. Brandon
Yeah.
Phillips is one of my favorite baseball players of all time. And I didn't really follow baseball like hardly at all like I used to. But today is actually the MLB opening day. So you kind of have any thoughts on the MLB opening day today? Do you have any like World Series predictions for this upcoming season?
Well, first of all, finally, because like a few months ago, it just seems like there wasn't going to be a season due to the MLB lockout, owners being stubborn, the players being stubborn, and I actually did an episode on my on the baseball season last month. So if you want to find that, it's called Kennedy Sports Guys Real Predictions and Previews for the MLB season. You can find it on my website, kennedysportsguy.com, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, and other streaming services. But in that episode, I say that the Toronto Blue Jays are going to defeat the Los Angeles Dodgers in the World Series in 7 games.
I don't really get excited for MLB opening day that I used to. Like 7 or 8 years ago, I would have been excited, but now it's just like I don't know. I just can't really get into it because I feel like baseball is slowly evolving and changing, but not for the better. It seems like. And I kind of agree with what you said there for the World Series pick. I have the Dodgers over the Blue Jays in 6 games. So when you look at the Blue Jays, they have Bo Bichette, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Matt Chapman. But when you also look at the Dodgers, they have so many guys as well. I feel like their pitching is just top tier right now. And I kind of thought about putting the Cardinals in the World Series. Now it's risky and, kind of debatable. But the Cardinals, to me, I think they have a better roster than people think. But their pitching is just not as good as the Dodgers. That's why I had the Dodgers in there as well. But this baseball season should be very interesting, especially when you look at some of these guys. Some of these guys, I mean, are going to be huge stars for the next several years and going to have breakout season. There's also some of these guys who are going to be probably retiring at the end of the year. I mentioned the Cardinals, but it's really crazy because we're going to see the final year of Adam Wainwright, Albert Pujols, and Yadier Molina. Two for sure Hall of Famers. 2 for sure Hall of Famers, and 1 I don't think he would be in Wainwright just because he doesn't have a ton of strikeouts and he's hurt quite often. But when you also look at some other guys like Vladimir Guerrero Jr., Tatis, some of these guys who've been on the scene for a couple of years, but I think could really take their next step and be cement themselves as arguably the best player in the league. Obviously, Ohtani, had a historic season this past year with the Angels. Be very interesting to see with baseball with the opening day today and throughout the regular season. And kind of talking about wrestling. With obviously with Wrestlemania, this past weekend, so many events you're able to attend. Actually, I think it was in October, in New York, you were actually able to attend, Arthur Ashe, stadium, that event, with Omega and Daniel Bryan. In New York, there are so many events in New York, and obviously, you're a big New York Jets fan. So what are your kind of thoughts on some of these moves so far that the Jets have done in the offseason?
I thought the moves were perfect, small under the radar, but I just feel like they need more. So a few weeks ago, we almost got Tyreek Hill. For some reason, obviously he didn't want to go to New York because of the weather and the income tax here in New York City, which is understandable. He chose Miami. So I guess we need to, go out there and get some moves in the draft, get a wide receiver, like a big time wide receiver. Guess our defense is pretty good. I mean, they need to, shore up that secondary. Zach Wilson needs more weapons. Like get a running back in the draft just in case Michael Carter gets hurt. Get the tight end position is already spoken for. I think if we sign one of your players, I think CJ, what's his name?
Uzama.
We signed him. I mean, I guess he's a pretty decent tight end. Um, yeah, I just think we need a wide receiver, like a legitimate deep threat down the field for Zach Wilson because right now the only good wide receiver he has is Braxton Berrios.
And when you look at the Jets, they signed CJ Uzama. That surprised me so much. I thought for sure Uzama was going to stay in Cincinnati. It was very weird and just odd that he decided to go for the Jets because, he signed 3 for 24, which is 8 per season. That's only about 1.5 more than what his previous contract was with the Bengals. And to me, it just kind of felt like Uzama was one of those guys who's going to have his whole career with Cincinnati. And obviously that did not happen.
Mm-hmm.
But Uzama, to me, signing with the Jets, it's one of those guys like, I don't know. I feel like a little bit he's kind of overrated. I'm not just saying this because he's, no longer with the Bengals. But he's one of those guys. This past year, he's really been, talked about a lot because he's one of our locker room leaders. But this past season, he had a career year, but still did not even surpass 550 yards. He's one of those guys. He should never be your third option, in my opinion. I think he should be your fourth. If he's your fourth, that's fine. If he's your second or third, you are in some deep trouble because he's not one of those guys who's going to get 80, 90 yards a game like a Travis Kelce and Darren Waller. Mm-hmm. He's a better blocker than he is. He's a far better blocker than he is at catching. But another thing I really, really love for the Jets, and it makes so much sense when you start thinking about it, and I don't get why it was not talked about more, was Laken Tomlinson signing with the Jets. He played
that was a big one.
Played for the 49ers while, Robert Saleh was their defense coordinator because there's already kind of some chemistry there, get some more protection for Zach Wilson. And I'm very interested for the Jets. I mean, they get Carl Lawson back now from injury this past year. And, they have 2 top 10 picks. I would not be surprised at all if Sauce Gardner, the corner from Cincinnati, is the 4th pick. They like him a ton. Also, if Kyle Hamilton's there at 10, I feel like, you kind of got to pull the trigger. I mean, he's too good to pass up at 10. But you mentioned wide receiver. There's been kind of talks about the Jets and DK Metcalf, possibly trading one of their first-round picks for Metcalf. I don't know how reliable the source is, but I saw something that supposedly the Jets offered the 10th overall pick for DK Metcalf, and the Seahawks still said no. What are your thoughts on that supposedly trade offer, and do you want the Jets to go after Metcalf?
Yes, and yes. They need to get a big name wide receiver. I think DJ Metcalf would be the perfect addition. I think a second or third rounder for him would be good. I think Metcalf is not going to be in Seattle long because Russell Wilson is gone. The entire the defensive core is gone. And he will be a perfect fit for the Jets offense and a great target for Zach Wilson. So DJ Metcalf, please come to New York because we need you.
And when you look at Metcalf, I don't know. I feel like I think it's a little bit overrated. And it's one of those deals that's like he's still was not even great this past season. I know Russell Wilson missed a couple games, but he was not nearly as good as people thought he was going to be this past season. You put him with Zach Wilson, or you put a top wide receiver like we talked about, Tyreek Hill, obviously got traded to Miami. Like the thought of Tyreek Hill with Zach Wilson, as soon as this was when Tyreek Hill, basically requested a trade, and the Jets and Dolphins were in the market for him. I already was messaging one of my friends, holy crap, like Zach Wilson and Tyreek Hill, I mean, that could be super, super good. Zach Wilson with Metcalf could be really good. Or even if they draft a guy like Chris Olave, the wide receiver from Ohio State with a 10th pick. I feel like Zach Wilson is way better than people realize. The first half of the season, he sucked, but it was a learning curve for him. Second half, he was way, way better than people, think he thought he was. The first half, he was just trying to get these home run balls, these 40, 50-yard passes. But the second half, he got so much smarter in these 6, 7-yard passes. Not every play is going to be a home run for Wilson. Just, maybe get a 5 or 6-yard pass. It's better for him than passing at 40 yards every single play. It has improved offensive line now, getting Lake and Tomlinson. If they get another weapon, I'm really, really excited for the Jets. I feel like I said this the last time we talked. I would not be surprised at all if the Jets are in the playoffs. I know some people might call me crazy. I know you won't call me crazy because you're a Jets fan. But I've all the teams, obviously aside from the Bengals, I'm probably most excited about the Jets this season.
So the draft is coming in within a couple of weeks. And they have the 4th overall pick. So I think I will use the 4th overall pick on Drake London from UFC. I think he will be a fantastic fit for the Jets as well. He's young. He's pretty fast. He's pretty agile. And if we don't get him, there's a probability that we will, I would dare to trade that 4th overall pick to the Seattle Seahawks. Let's see if we could get Dk Metcalf there. I mean, I think that'll be a fair trade, but I think for now, I think they should just use that 4th overall pick on Drake London. I think he will be a fantastic fit, but if they decide to go to DJ Metcalf in Seattle, I think it will be a perfect fit. It will be a win-win for both teams.
It should be very interesting to see what the Jets do. I feel like the Jets are one of those teams who, when you look at heading into the 2021 season, the Bengals had no expectations, and they just shocked everybody. When you look at the 2022 Jets, I think they are capable of having, I'm not going to say Super Bowl, but I think a possible playoff run. And they are definitely one of those more underrated teams to watch out for this upcoming season. So, kind of talking about WrestleMania weekend, experience there. Cody Rhodes debuting at WrestleMania. Ezekiel now debuting, and there's no longer Elias. Samoa Joe signs with AEW. Will Jade Cargill be the next Goldberg? MLB opening today. Also talking a little bit about, the Jets' offseason moves. They don't win the draft, which is crazy. It sounds just 3 weeks away now. So that kind of about does it. So can you kind of tell some of the listeners where they can follow you on social media?
Sure. You can follow me on Twitter at Kenny_sports. On Instagram at KennySportsGuy1. You can follow me on TikTok as well at Kenny Sports Podcast. Also, for future and past episodes, you can head on over to my website, KennySportsGuy.com. You can also find me on Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher. All you really have to do is just hit that search bar, just type in Kenny Sports Guys Podcast, and you're there.
Definitely put the links in the description below. If you're new to the channel or you've seen my videos before, I would really, really appreciate it if you could subscribe to my channel. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you all next time on the Sports Dude Hunt Show.
Take care, guys.